Hi, writer. Want my support to get your book finished and out into the world? Join my Inner Circle membership, a community of supportive writers where each month we set goals, share pages, learn new techniques, and get you unstuck fast so that you can make continuous progress on your writing goals. Coached Writers Finish. And you can get me as your virtual book coach in this group program for only $199 a month, much less than a single one-on-one coaching session. Check out the details at suzyvadori.com/inner circle. We have live events happening all the time, so grab your spot now to join us. Welcome to the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast with me, Suzy Vadori, where I peel back the layers of how to wow your readers with your fiction, your nonfiction. Anybody can bang out a first draft, but it takes a little more work to make your book as amazing as it can be. Join me as I share the step-by-step writing techniques you could apply to your writing right away, as I host successful writers who share a behind-the-scenes look at their own writing lives, and as I live coach writers on their pages, giving practical writing examples that will make your own writing stronger. Nobody is born knowing how to write an engaging book. There are real and important skills that you need to learn. On this show, I cut through the noise and get you all the info you need. I can't wait to see how this information is going to transform your writing. Welcome to the 2025 recap episode of Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Suzy Vadori. The recap episode in 2024 that I recorded at the end of the year was kind of a whim. It was a quick thing where people were like, well, how was your year? And I felt like I was repeating myself to both clients and writers and people in the inspired writing community and my colleagues. And I was like, well, if people are interested in this, maybe it'll be a great podcast. And it turns out when we looked at it just recently this past month, that episode that I recorded at the end of 2024 was actually my highest rated or most popular episode with the most downloads on the podcast last year. That's where I shared all the things that I got up to in 2024. And if you were curious, you weren't alone. So I am doing it again. Here goes. I am about to share the good, the bad, the ugly of being an author, being an editor, and being a book coach in 2025. This is the 2025 year-end roundup recorded about to hit the holiday circuit of Christmas concerts and parties where I see people I don't interact with daily in my writerly circles. Inevitably, they're going to ask me what I've been up to this year. It's been happening already, and I'm not quite sure how to answer because I'm not sure if they really want to know. Many people in my communities know me as a mom, as a former business executive, or as a volunteer in my community. They know I'm busy doing something because I travel a lot and I work long hours, and so I'm not always available. And I don't make every social gathering, but most have no idea that I actually run a business around writing and how many writers I actually support along the way. Here's the one time a year that I am willing to lay out the behind the scenes look at my year, and it's just for you. This month, December 2025, marks a decade since I released my first novel, The Fountain, in 2015. And this week, I actually woke up to an unexpected glowing review of that book on Instagram. And I had to take a moment to appreciate the fact that 10 years later, The Fountain is still touching hearts and minds of teens, adults, and everyone who reads it. And I'm so appreciative because even though if I ever was to produce a third edition of that book, there's 2 editions out. If I ever had a third edition, now that I'm a writing coach and I've learned a lot, a decade's changed, there's different trends and things are different in the publishing industry. Trends that I share with my clients change a lot in that book. And I don't know, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But the point is, a decade and it still stands. And even though there are things that I would change or there are things that I would do better, that book I am so proud of because it started this journey. And if you told me a decade ago that I would be here on a podcast, sharing my journey with other writers and working on tons and tons of books every single year and helping writers make their dreams come true, I would have said you were nuts. But here we are. And so I want to remind you that as you're writing your book, that is going to open doors when you finish it. And along the way, it's actually going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet. I don't know where it's going to lead. I can't guarantee that you're going to sell 1,000,000 copies. Maybe you will. Maybe that's not your goal. But I can tell you that it is going to change your life in tons and tons of different ways. Because when Fountain was first released, I was actually a business executive and I managed factories in China. I was writing on the side. I was actually halfway across the world when I got the notification that The Fountain was a finalist for an Aurora Award, which is Canada's premier science fiction and fantasy award. And by the time Book 2 was also a finalist for that same award, writing was starting to take over my life. And I made the not so difficult decision to quit my day job and go all in. I was being asked to speak, teach, and write and get paid for it. And I didn't have time to work my day job. So now I support a community of writers more than 12,000 strong, including you, dear reader and dear writer, and I get to read books for a living. Here we are. And I couldn't be more pleased with where my love of all things writing has led me. And I thank you, listeners, so much for being on this journey with me. I work with a small support team, all writers who help me administer courses, organize events for our community, and being organized in general. Without them, I couldn't do half the things that I managed to do in a year. They are all writers. They are all brilliant. They are all positive. And I am so grateful to have them by my side as I made great strides to helping as many writers as possible get their books out into the world this year. Fair warning, the reason I share this, if you're listening to this podcast and you think that being a writer means that you have to do all these things, it doesn't. As I share when I teach marketing to writers, choose one thing that feels easy for you and keep showing up consistently. My mandate is to bring as many writers along with me as I can. So I've grown my business a little differently than you will. But if your writing life looks different, that's perfectly fine. It's your creative life and you get to be creative with how you build it. Truth be told, I actually thrive on a little bit of chaos. So I love tackling huge goals and they tend to evolve through my years. So what did my team and I get up to this year? Okay, I'm going to start you out with some numbers. This year, we sent 52 plus newsletters to more than 12,000 subscribers. And what I mean by 52 plus is that if you are subscribed to my Inspired Writing email list, I send out a newsletter every single Thursday. And sometimes I send more if there's events to announce or if I've got something going on that I think you'll be interested in. So make sure if you don't already subscribe to it, every single week, you'll get a message from me in my inbox. It often has stories about my personal life. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, where you're wondering what's it really like to be a writer, I share a lot of that in this. And I also share what's happening in the industry so that you have to keep it because I'll keep up for you. Okay, this episode is episode 78 for the year on the Show Don't Tell podcast. And the podcast now gets more than 1,000 downloads a month. And it's in the top 5% of all podcasts worldwide in terms of popularity. Now, I mean, not just in the category of writing, it's even higher than that in the category of writing. I am so grateful to what's happening with this podcast, and thank you so much for listening. This year, I got bolder, and I started inviting more guests that I know will help you up your game. Because when it first started out, I invited some people close to my network, but the podcast was small. And now that you're all listening, know that I can tell potential guests, hey, my podcast is doing great and we have amazing listeners and they want to hear from you. And I do hear from you. So please, 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 if you haven't already, go ahead, drop that 5-star rating for us. Give me a review on this podcast because what that does is it helps me get more and more interesting guests for you to listen to that will share all of their behind the scenes tips. So if you love the podcast, please help us find those amazing guests by dropping a review. Besides the podcast, I also celebrated the 10th anniversary of One Stopper Writers with Writers Helping Writers. And I signed on for my 4th year as a resident writing coach with them, publishing 4 articles on writing craft for them. And I celebrated my 50th birthday with all of you. Thank you all for the well wishes. I feel energized and filled to the brim as I tackle the next 50 years of my life plan. I was a guest presenter at 5 in-person conferences for writers and artists this year and 8 online summits or conferences for organizations such as Daniel David Wallace's Escape the Plot Forest, Dabble.com, and Tellwell Publishing. This year, the invitation is coming, and I'm so excited to meet writers at each and every event who are keen to learn how to make their books the best they can be. My amazing job took me this year to Scottsdale, Arizona, to Niagara Falls, to Sudbury, Ontario, Red Deer, Alberta, and even all the way to Portugal, where I met with powerhouse online businesswomen from around the world to plan our year ahead. I know that the word is getting out about how much I love helping writers get their books ready for readers, and I am so grateful that my techniques and really practical advice is landing. If you have a conference near you for writers and want to have me come and speak, please recommend me to the conference organizers. I would love to come and meet you, hearing all about your books. So far, in the first half of 2026, I plan to travel to Cancun, to Kelowna, British Columbia, to Denver, to Phoenix, to Wisconsin, and even to Florence, Italy, which I'm particularly excited about. Maybe I'll be headed your way next. Talk with writers about the projects actually opens a conversation that I'm always excited to have. And I learn as much from each writer who's feeling called to write a book as they learn from me. This year, I made a concerted effort. It was specific. It was one of my goals to show up in person to events wherever possible, as meeting writers in the world gives me the most joy. The pandemic sort of robbed us of that, and it was a while before these conferences got going again, so I'm really excited to be back. This year, I even joined a band. This is a little bit off topic, but it isn't, because it's part of my creative energy. We started this band with some colleagues, and I got to perform on some of these trips. And if you're wondering, I'm a singer. I don't play an instrument. And although I own a bunch of instruments, I don't play any of them well enough to think anyone else would want to listen to them. We're a folk band, and we sing in 2-part harmony. I sing the descant, along with an acoustic guitar, an amazing flautist who can add to any song we perform and make you wonder how you ever enjoyed the song without a flute solo in it. I'm a rare breed of writer who is extroverted, meaning that I get energy from interaction with others. So I tend to build my life with lots of activity to keep my batteries charged. But if you need to recharge in different ways and my life sounds exhausting, you may need to add more reflective activities. Throughout 2025, I worked one-on-one with 28 writers. I completed 14 developmental edits. That's a complete review and edit of a manuscript, and worked with 14 different writers to plan and complete their books in a coaching relationship. It's actually a few less than I worked with in 2024. I didn't have as many spots available to work with writers because of all the presenting and teaching I did, so it's a bit of a trade-off, but I still managed to keep my wait list reasonable. These past few years, I can usually start coaching with a writer within a month or two, and my waitlist for developmental editing averages 4 months out. So if you've been lurking in my community and know that you want to work with me when your book is ready, be sure to give me lots of notice so that I can fit you into my calendar. In July, I launched my first ever monthly membership program, The Inner Circle. This is where you can get me as your virtual book coach in a group, learning new techniques for writing, editing, or promoting your books, getting my eyes on your pages, and writing in community, which is a beautiful thing. There are even opportunities to meet with me one-on-one when you need it, to brainstorm or get unstuck on completing your book fast. We are 6 months into the program, but you can join at any time and meet the wonderful writers in there who are absolutely crushing their writing goals. I am so proud of the work that they are doing. This past week, we had a sort of reflective time where we talked about this past year, and one writer shared that the smartest decision she made for her writing this year was to join the Inner Circle. You can find us at suzyvadori.com/inner circle. People also ask me when I'm on this holiday circuit, the most common question I ask is, what about my own writing? Am I writing? What am I writing? So I'll share that right now I'm in the process of writing a nonfiction book on writing, on my favorite topic, of course, show don't tell. It's a little meta, I know. But that book I've been working on for a little while, but I put it on hold for most of 2025 because when I put together the nonfiction proposal, I actually realized that there were areas I wanted to be stronger before I launched the book. Now, I've worked on dozens of nonfiction book proposals with clients, so I see a lot of other author platforms and I understand where mine falls. But when I was putting it together, I just saw some places that I was completely inspired to work on to make sure that when the book comes out, it'll reach as many writers as possible. Even if you don't plan to take your nonfiction book, or your fiction book for that matter, to the traditional publishing space, I highly recommend completing this proposal because it was a really interesting way to show me where my own blind spots were. Of course, it's like the shoemaker's kids who never have any shoes, right? They're prioritized last. It's the same thing with a book coach where I don't look at my own things until I have to do this exercise, and I was able to see. So while part of me wondered, was I just procrastinating by putting this book on hold? When I started pulling these numbers for you for this episode, I realized I've actually hit all my goals, and it's time to update that proposal and get that book out. This podcast, as well as my weekly newsletter and meeting as many writers as possible, were my 3 goals. Plus, those are the most fun parts of my job anyway, so it wasn't all work. My newsletter this year, my inspired writing newsletter that I mentioned that you need to get, it gained 3,000 new subscribers this year for a lifetime total of 20,000 writers subscribed to the newsletter since I launched it in early 2021. These writers found me through this podcast, through events that I've done, and through free resources that I offer. My most popular resources this year were my 30 Ways to Promote Your Book, which had 643 downloads so far in 2025, and my Show Don't Tell guide with 412 downloads, which I'll link to both of these in the show notes so that you can grab those resources for yourself. 1,315 writers completed my quiz to let them know if their writing was ready for readers yet. Actually share that quiz that much this year, so I was surprised that many people still took it. It was created in 2020, and it has had more than 65,000 writers take it since then. I might actually look, now that I see those numbers, it's always worth looking at numbers. I might actually look at refreshing this and creating another fun quiz for you in 2026. Okay, let's take a look at the podcast. This is podcast episode 78, as I mentioned. But I recorded and my team produced 53 of these in 2025. The podcast launched in 2024. We also participated in our very first Podcast-thon event in March 2025, where we supported Dolly Parton's Imagination Library charity, which provides books to support literacy in preschool children. Stats that are tracked by our podcast distributor, Buzzsprout. 56% of you right now are listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. 15% listen on Spotify. 13% of you are listening directly from your internet browser, like Chrome. And 8% of you are listening directly from Buzzsprout. And yes, if you are a math wizard, as I am really a geek about numbers, I know these numbers don't add up to 100%, but there's a third category. So if you listen somewhere else, can you let me know where so that I can fill in this gap with some logic? Because I don't know where. In addition to the listeners that Buzzsprout tracks, though, a matched amount, like the same number of writers again, listen to this audio-only podcast on YouTube. Kudos to you all who are listening on YouTube. And an equal number, again, listen through my Substack posts so you can see how this all adds up. If you are tired of all these stats, I don't blame you. It's a lot of work for my team to get the word out, but it's worth every moment. I'll leave you with some behind-the-scenes stories of client successes. In 2025, 23 writers that I worked with in my membership or one-on-one wrote the end on their first draft of their manuscript, and 16 published their books, some with big traditional publishers and some independently, whether they were fantasy, memoirs, science fiction, romance, women's fiction, or nonfiction business books. Most writers finished their books. And every single writer I worked with took huge strides toward their writing goals to get their books written exactly as they feel called to write them. I celebrated clients who hit the USA Today bestseller list, who signed book deals, who planned launch parties, and who also sold thousands of books. But whatever your goals are, I am here to cheer you on at the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast. And I can't wait to see what 2026 brings for you and your writing. Thanks for tuning in to the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast with me, Suzy Vadori. It is my absolute honor to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or the book that you're planning to write. Please help me keep the podcast going by helping people find us. You could subscribe to the podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening to show how much you enjoy the show. That's how other listeners will find us. Also, visit suzyvadori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly inspired writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about all the upcoming training events and writing courses that happen in my community. Want my eyes on your writing? Submit a page of your current draft for a chance to come on the podcast at the link in the show notes. I'd love to chat with you about your writing in my always positive, incredibly supportive way so that you can make great strides towards your writing goals. I'm here to cheer you on. Remember, that book you're writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make that it the absolute best it can be. See you again right here next week.